the second lecture, Equivalence in Translation. The first, what is translation equivalence? This section of the manual deals with the problems of translation equivalence, which is defined as a measure of semantic similarity between source text and target text. If we compare a number of target texts with their source texts, we shall discover that the degree of semantic similarity between the two texts involved in the translating process may vary. In other words, the equivalence between source text and target text may be based on the reproduction of different parts of the source text contents. Accordingly, several types of translation equivalence can be distinguished. Let us first of all things out translations in which the degree of semantic similarity with source text seems to be the lowest. Language system is the part of semiotics dealing with science systems. Therefore, semiotic theories may be applied to language functioning. According to the semiotic approach, translation is language code switching. When translating, we switch from one language to another one. American linguist Roman Jacobson, in his article on linguistic aspects of translation 5, spoke of 3 possibilities of code switching. The first, interlinguistic translation, or rewording, interpreting verbal signs through other signs of the same language. This can be done on diachronic level. Chaucer's text is translated into modern English. When done on synchronic level, this kind of code switching is called a paraphrase. We often deal with paraphrasing when trying to explain or define things. The second, interlanguage translation, substituting verbal signs of one language by verbal signs of another language, or switching from one language code to another one. This type of code switching is translation proper, the object of translation studies. The third, intersemiotic translation, substituting signs of one semiotic system by signs of a different semiotic system. In its broad meaning, the term implies transmutation and can be illustrated by decoding some ideas and themes expressed, for example, in a poem through the language of music or dance. We communicate to transfer information from one person to another. Translation helps people communicate if they speak different languages. Thus, translation is a two-faced phenomenon. On the one hand, it is the process of transferring information. On the other hand, it is the result of this process. By the result is meant a new text created in translating. A speaker or writer makes a meaningful utterance, called the text, and addresses it to the listener, reader, or receptor who understands the purport of the text and reacts to it. The translation situation establishes the elements of communication. The receptor of the original text in turn becomes a translator who makes a translate text or target text intended for the receptor speaking another language. The source text is the text to be translated. The target text is the end product, the translated text. For the translation to be adequate and effective, the target text should be equivalent to the source text. Indeed, when reading tragedies by Shakespeare in Russian, the receptor is but seldom aware that the words seen in the text were not written by Shakespeare but by some other persons, a translator. The form of the target text is new, but the purport and the content are very close to the original. Paradoxically, the better a translator's work, the less his/her work is observed. The translator text is attributed to the author speaking another language, and this text is used everywhere as if it were the original. Thus, translation unifies two different languages. Speech acts in one communicative situation. It can be defined as a special type of communication intended to convey information between the participants speaking two different languages. As Nida and Tabor put it, translating consists of reproducing in the receptor language the closest natural equivalent of the source language meaning, and secondly, in terms of style. We have discovered that there are 5 different types of semantic relationships between equivalent phrases in two languages. Thus, all translations can be classified into 5 types of equivalence, which differ as to the volume and character of the information retained in each. Each subsequent type of equivalence retains the part of the original contents which includes the information preserved in the previous types. Every translation can be regarded as belonging to a certain type of equivalence. Since each subsequent type implies a higher degree of semantic similarity, we can say that every translation is made at certain level of equivalence. Each level of equivalence is characterized by the part of information the retention of which distinguishes it from the previous level. The list of levels therefore includes the first, the level of the purport of communication; the second, the level of the situation; the third, the level of the method of description of the situation; the fourth, the level of syntactic meanings; and the fifth, the level of word semantics. Okay, the lecture is over. Thank you for your attention.